Have you ever felt completely exhausted trying to earn the love and approval of someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally? For many people, that someone is their own mother. Mother's Day, which should be a celebration of affection and gratitude, can become a painful reminder of a complicated relationship marked by impossible demands, constant criticism, and conditional affection. While others share warm messages and special moments with their mothers, you may find yourself struggling to make sense of this date. And not only does it deepen the pain, but it can also make you feel even more isolated. If you're here, you probably know what it's like to desperately try to gain your mother's love or approval, only to realize that this pursuit seems endless. But know that you are not alone. This video was created especially for those who want to understand the roots of this toxic love and, most importantly, discover how to heal and rewrite that story. Now, let's explore together how childhood shapes the first attempts to win the heart of a narcissistic mother, and how these experiences profoundly impact your adult life. When you were a child, you might not have fully understood what was happening, but you felt something deeply uncomfortable. Do you remember those desperate attempts to create the perfect Mother's Day gift? Maybe it was a handmade card, a collage with colored paper, or even that drawing you spent hours perfecting. You poured your soul into those small creations, hoping that this time, your mother would finally notice your efforts. But often, instead of praise or recognition, there were criticisms or comparisons. Why didn't you do it like your sibling? Or, this could have been better. And there you were again, wondering, what did I do wrong? The truth is, for a child, the maternal figure represents much more than just a person. She is the first model of love, security, and emotional validation. When that connection is conditional, based on impossible demands, something inside you begins to fragment. From an early age, you learn that love isn't something given freely, but something that must be earned, and it never seems to be enough. This feeling can intensify in families where there is a favorite child, or the so-called golden child. If you didn't occupy that place, you might have grown up with a constant sense of competition. Every gesture, every effort, was an attempt to prove your worth. Even if unconsciously, you began to internalize the idea that you had to be perfect to be loved. This pattern of relentless pursuit of maternal recognition follows many people for years, shaping their emotions and behaviors in adulthood. And even when your efforts seemed to work for a brief moment, there was always that feeling that something was missing. As a child, you already carried the weight of trying to fill a void that seemed insurmountable. This painful reality often becomes more evident as you grow older, especially during moments like Mother's Day, when societal expectations collide with your personal experiences. As you grew older, the dynamic with your mother likely began to change. In childhood, perhaps your biggest concerns revolved around trying to impress her or win her affection. But by the time you reached adolescence, something inside you started to rebel against this constant feeling of inadequacy. For some, this manifested as explicit rebellion, intense arguments, slamming doors, a desperate attempt to emotionally distance yourself from her. For others, however, the path was different. Instead of confrontation, there was an even greater effort to be the perfect child, tirelessly striving to provide what your mother seemed to demand: success, beauty, social approval. But regardless of the path chosen, the truth is that both carried the same emotional burden. The tension between you and your mother became increasingly palpable. Perhaps she began invalidating your emotions more frequently, criticizing your choices or dismissing your achievements. Or, on the other hand, maybe you felt that you would never be enough, no matter how hard you tried. And then came Mother's Day, a date that should celebrate connection and gratitude, but only deepened this discomfort. You might remember moments when you thought, how do I get her attention? How do I make her truly see me? These questions echoed in your mind, even if you didn't know exactly how to express them. Mother's Day became less about celebration and more about emotional survival. It was as if, on this day, all the impossible standards and unrealistic expectations were amplified. And although you were growing up, maturing, and beginning to realize that something was wrong, it was still hard to escape this emotional trap. This transitional phase, marked by internal and external conflicts, profoundly shaped how you viewed yourself and others. And these marks would remain visible far beyond adolescence, directly influencing your choices and relationships in adulthood. Now that you've reached adulthood, the emotional triggers caused by a narcissistic mother can become even more intense on occasions like Mother's Day. Even if you've developed strategies over the years to deal with family dynamics, holidays have a peculiar way of reviving old wounds. For many people, This day is not just a reminder of the complicated relationship with their mother, but also an opportunity to reevaluate everything that was, and still is, difficult to face. The problem begins with unrealistic expectations. Holidays like Mother's Day are designed to be moments of connection and gratitude, but for those with a narcissistic mother, they often turn into an impossible test to pass. Perhaps you've spent years trying to impress her with perfect gifts, grand gestures, or even that heartfelt message sent in advance, only to receive criticism, silence, or disdainful comparisons. And even if your mother seems satisfied for a brief moment, something inside you knows it won't last. Moreover, narcissistic mothers tend to use these occasions to emotionally manipulate their adult children. They might complain about not being valued enough, highlight perceived flaws, or even blame you for any discomfort they feel during the day. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you try to please her, the more exhausted and frustrated you feel. And so, Mother's Day becomes less about celebration and more about emotional survival. Even if you're aware of these patterns, it can be hard to completely escape them. Many people end up repeating behaviors learned in childhood, such as trying to manage their mother's emotions or seeking approval incessantly. These deeply ingrained habits are difficult to break, especially in a context as culturally significant as Mother's Day. However, understanding how these triggers work is already an important step toward healing. After all, recognizing that the problem isn't in you, but rather in the toxic dynamic established early on, can pave the way for new ways of dealing with these complex emotions. The impact of a narcissistic mother doesn't end when you become an adult. It extends throughout your life, shaping your choices, emotions, and relationships in ways that are often difficult to recognize. One of the deepest marks of this legacy is the constant feeling of inadequacy. You may spend years, or even decades, trying to prove your worth to the world, as if perpetually chasing something that will never be enough. This relentless pursuit of rightness can lead you down one of three common emotional paths experienced by those who grew up under the weight of a narcissistic mother. The first path is chronic anxiety. Imagine living in a constant state of doubt, questioning every decision, anticipating rejection in every interaction, and feeling responsible for others' happiness. This pattern stems directly from the dynamic with your mother, where you learned that love was conditional and that it was your job to ensure she was satisfied. Now, as an adult, this can manifest as an exaggerated need to please others, putting your own needs on the back burner. The second path involves significant difficulties in emotional regulation. Many people with narcissistic mothers struggle with issues like substance abuse, binge eating, or difficulty managing anger and frustration. This happens because, during childhood, they rarely had a safe space to express their emotions authentically. Instead, they learned to suppress their feelings to avoid conflict or meet maternal demands. The result is a constant internal struggle to manage impulses that often feel out of control. Finally, there is the third path, one no one wishes to walk: vulnerability to developing narcissistic traits. Growing up without a healthy emotional mirror, without someone who truly sees and validates your existence, can leave you susceptible to replicating the same toxic patterns you suffered through. Perhaps you learned that being loved means being perfect, or that attention only comes when you're the center of it. These distorted lessons can profoundly influence your future interactions. Beyond these paths, another striking aspect is the tendency to choose partners and friends who reflect the same dysfunctional dynamics experienced with your mother. People who grew up with narcissistic mothers often find themselves in relationships where they are undervalued or invalidated, simply because this type of behavior feels familiar. It's also not uncommon for them to stay in jobs with abusive bosses or tolerate manipulations from colleagues, repeating cycles that should have been broken long ago. This psychological legacy may seem overwhelming, but it carries with it an opportunity for transformation. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward changing them. By understanding how your history has shaped who you are today, you begin to create space to heal old wounds and build new ways of relating to yourself and others. Remember that in the description of this video, you'll find a link to complementary content that can help you rediscover your inner peace, strengthen your mind, and gain a deeper understanding of narcissism. Now let's talk about isolation and shame. Emotional isolation is one of the most painful consequences of having a narcissistic mother, and it often intensifies as you enter adulthood. Many people with this type of family dynamic report difficulty trusting others, even in relationships that should feel safe. This pattern of distrust stems directly from the experience of never having been truly seen or validated by the maternal figure. When your own mother cannot provide a safe space to express your emotions, you learn to internalize your feelings and avoid sharing them with the outside world. Additionally, there is a deep sense of shame associated with this complicated relationship. You may feel ashamed for not having the kind of maternal bond that other people seem to have so effortlessly. Perhaps you spent years hiding family issues, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. This need to conceal your reality creates an even greater barrier between you and those around you, deepening the feeling of loneliness. This combination of distrust and shame often leads people to distance themselves even further. They may avoid talking about their experiences, even with close friends, because they fear others won't understand, or worse, that they'll be judged. The result is a life marked by superficial connections and few genuine relationships. However, this isolation doesn't have to be permanent. Recognizing how these patterns were formed is the first step toward building new ways of connecting with others and with yourself. We've arrived at the part about mourning the idealized relationship. One of the most painful aspects of having a narcissistic mother is the deep grief for the relationship you never had. Since childhood, you may have dreamed of a loving, understanding, and present maternal figure, someone who would stand by you during difficult times, celebrate your achievements, and love you unconditionally. But as the years passed, that idealized image began to shatter, revealing the reality of an emotionally empty or even harmful dynamic. This grief is especially acute on Mother's Day, when social media and society in general glorify the bond between mothers and children. You might find yourself thinking, why didn't I have that? This sense of loss isn't just about your mother. It's about something fundamental that feels stolen from you. It's natural to long for this kind of connection, as it represents one of the most basic emotional pillars of human life. Many people carry this pain for years, alternating between feelings of sadness, frustration, and even anger. Some continue to idealize the possibility of fixing the relationship, holding on to hope that one day their mother will finally see them for who they truly are. But recognizing that this idealized relationship never existed, and probably never will, is an essential step toward beginning to heal this old wound. And in doing so, you create space for new ways to find support and love, whether with yourself or with other significant figures in your life. Now that we've explored the deep scars left by a narcissistic mother, it's time to talk about how to heal and rebuild your emotional life. The first step, and perhaps the most important, is recognizing that the fault is not yours. Many people carry the belief that, somehow, they could have done something differently to fix the relationship with their mother. This idea is a dangerous trap. The truth is that the problem was never you. It was the dysfunctional dynamic established from the start. Allow yourself to accept this as an act of self-compassion. One of the most powerful tools in this process is learning to set clear and firm boundaries. If you still maintain contact with your mother, it may be necessary to redefine the terms of that relationship. This means saying no when she tries to manipulate your emotions or impose unrealistic expectations. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you grew up in an environment where your boundaries were constantly violated. However, setting these boundaries is essential to protect your emotional well-being. For example, on Mother's Day, you might choose to send a simple message instead of attending an in-person meeting, knowing that this will reduce the risk of conflicts or frustrations. Another crucial strategy is seeking external support. Healthy relationships are essential for filling the void left by the absence of a loving maternal figure. This can include grandparents, aunts, mentors, or even deep friendships. For many people, finding a substitute figure, someone who offers genuine validation and unconditional support, can be a significant part of the healing process. Additionally, investing in therapy can be transformative. A qualified professional can help you unravel the emotional patterns learned in childhood and develop new ways of relating to yourself and others. Finally, creating personal self-care rituals can be a powerful way to honor your own needs. On Mother's Day, for example, you might decide to spend the day doing something that truly brings you joy, watching a favorite movie, cooking a special meal, or even writing a letter to yourself, acknowledging your strength and resilience. These small symbolic gestures can help you regain control over a date that once seemed dominated by pain and frustration. By adopting these strategies, you begin to build a new narrative for your life, one in which you are no longer a prisoner of the legacy left by your mother. Each step taken toward healing is a victory, and each moment of self-compassion is an opportunity to rewrite your story. Although the legacy of a narcissistic mother may seem overwhelming, it doesn't have to define the rest of your life. Many people find powerful paths to heal their emotional wounds and break the toxic cycles that have marked them so deeply. One such path is creating new substitute maternal figures. Perhaps you found in a grandmother, aunt, or even a mentor, someone who offered the unconditional support you always longed for. These connections can be profoundly transformative, helping to fill the void left by the absence of a healthy relationship with your mother. Another meaningful path is when you become a parent. For many, parenthood represents an opportunity to get right what went wrong in their own childhood. If you're aware of your mother's toxic patterns, you can commit to creating an emotionally safe and loving environment for your own children. This not only breaks the intergenerational cycle of pain, but also becomes an extraordinary gift for future generations. You may not have had the ideal maternal model, but you can become the parental role model your children deserve. However, not everyone follows these paths immediately. Some people still carry a conflicted sense of loyalty toward their narcissistic mother, as if they still owe her something, even after years of emotional abuse. This traumatic bond can make the process of separation and healing more difficult. But recognizing that this loyalty isn't love, but rather a consequence of trauma, is an important step in breaking these invisible ties. Healing doesn't mean erasing the past, but rather learning to rewrite your story. It's possible to build a new narrative where you are no longer a victim of your mother's dysfunctional patterns, and in doing so, you not only free yourself, but also strengthen your ability to create healthier relationships in the future. We've reached the end of this video, but before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a clear message. You are not alone. Whatever your experience with a narcissistic mother, know that your emotions are valid, and there is a path to healing the wounds that this relationship has left in you. Recognizing the problem is already a huge step, and every small action you take to care for yourself is a meaningful victory. If today you feel isolated or frustrated by Mother's Day, remember that this does not define who you are. You have the power to rewrite your story, whether by creating new emotional connections or learning to be kind to yourself. And if you have children, you can transform this pain into a legacy of love and security, offering them the kind of bond you always wished to have. Did you enjoy this content? Please subscribe to the channel to receive more videos like this one. Hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we post something new about emotional health, relationships, and important topics like this. Also, share this video with someone who might benefit from it. Your recommendation could make all the difference in someone else's life. If this video resonated with you, know that in the description below, there's a link to supportive materials, prepared with great care to help you understand what you've experienced, rebuild your self-esteem, and move forward with greater ease. Additionally, the video on your screen now might be exactly what you need to hear. Click on it, and I'll see you there. And never forget, you are light, and never stop shining.